In recent years, cold cases that were solved through advances in science have been the main focus of popular documentary television shows such as Forensic Files and The New Detectives. These shows highlight the unwavering precision of DNA evidence, often a stark contrast to the shaky, unreliable accounts of human witnesses. Science, after all, doesn't forget or misremember. But for every case where DNA delivers justice, there are many where crafty criminals find ways to outmaneuver it. Some killers wear gloves, wiping away fingerprints before they can betray them. Others destroy bodies to erase the telltale signs of their crimes or move them far from the scene, creating a labyrinth for investigators to untangle. And sometimes, they don't even need to be smart. Luck, decay, or the chaos of time does the dirty work, erasing evidence before anyone can even begin to collect it. When physical evidence fails, investigators must often turn to a far older, messier source of truth: the people. But people lie. They forget, they're afraid, and sometimes misplaced loyalty can make them guard the secrets of the guilty. Yet, in the most unexpected of cases, time itself becomes an investigator. Circumstances shift, consciences crack, and voices that were once silent or deemed unreliable suddenly rise to solve the unsolvable. That's exactly what happened in the 1993 murder of Rayna Rison. You're listening to True Crime Stories for No Sleep. If you're new here, welcome. This podcast is made for those quiet nights when you want a chilling story to keep you company, told in a calm, steady voice, without sudden noises or distractions. It's all about gripping tales delivered in a way that helps you relax, even when the story gets dark. We want to keep True Crime Stories for No Sleep free of ads for everyone. So if you enjoy the show and want to support us, subscribing to Dreams and Crimes is the best way to do that. Your support keeps the stories coming, just the way you love them. Thank you for making this possible. Now, let's hear the story of Rayna Rison. Located about an hour's drive east of Chicago on Interstate 80, LaPorte County, Indiana, is known for its low crime, affordable housing, and generally being a good place to live. The people of LaPorte County take pride in their homes and schools and are known for being friendly, helpful people. 16-year-old Rayna Rison was one of LaPorte's friendly inhabitants. Rayna enjoyed spending time with her parents, Bernie and Karen, and she was particularly close to her sister Wendy, who was 1 year her junior. Rayna excelled in school and was known to be a popular girl who got along with most of the disparate cliques that are often found in American high schools. In her spare time, Rayna worked part-time at the Pine Lake Animal Clinic in the town of LaPorte. The veterinarian she worked for stated she had a natural gift for the position and would no doubt someday realize her dream of becoming a veterinarian and opening her own clinic. But that dream was shattered when she vanished from the animal clinic on the night of March 26, 1993. When Rayna failed to come home that night, her parents and sister began to worry. The responsible 16-year-old always checked in with her parents, especially if she stayed all night at a friend's house. Rayna's parents called around to her friends, but no one had seen her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The local police and sheriff's department soon got involved, and the search for Rayna Rison became a missing persons case. Friends and family of Rayna joined together with local law enforcement to find her by searching local ponds, rivers, and fields. Her family also plastered the area with flyers that had recent pictures of Rayna. The extensive search quickly paid off when Rayna's car was located a day after her disappearance in a rural area of LaPorte County, but there were no signs of Rayna. An examination of Rayna's car seemed to reveal nothing that could help investigators. There was no blood present, and there was no damage to the car. It was as if she simply drove the car to that location and then left it for whatever reason. The discovery of the car raised a lot of red flags. but the local police were quick to point out that at that point, they only had a missing persons case on their hands. The disappearance frightened residents of LaPorte County and also brought media attention to the area. Rayna's disappearance was featured 3 times by John Walsh on America's Most Wanted in just 1 month. And Oakland Athletics owner and part-time LaPorte resident Charlie Finley offered a $25,000 reward for Rayna's safe return. To some outside LaPorte County, Finley's interest in the case appeared to be grandstanding, but the locals knew he was sincere. Yes, the billionaire had a tendency to be flamboyant at times. One of his best-known accomplishments was bringing the rock band The Beatles to Kansas City during their limited American tour in 1964, but he also had a legitimate love for LaPorte County. Finley donated much of his money to support schools in the county and even lived in the area while he owned the Athletics. But despite the immense media attention, profiles on America's Most Wanted, and the reward offered from Finley's own pockets, the police received no credible leads as to Rayna's whereabouts. Then, about a month after her car was discovered, the body of Rayna Rison was found in a lake in LaPorte County. The investigation then shifted from that of a missing persons case to a homicide, but unfortunately for the authorities, the fact that Rayna's body was submerged in water for so long meant that it would be more difficult to lift forensic evidence from the scene or Rayna's body. The autopsy determined that Rayna died of strangulation, and although DNA profiling was becoming more widely used by law enforcement in 1993, no forensic evidence was taken from her body. Police could not even say for sure if she was killed at the location where she was discovered or dumped at the scene. There were also apparently no eyewitnesses to the murder. As time moved further away from the discovery of Rayna's body, her murder began to slowly fade from the public eye. Her family held vigils every year, and her case had an occasional mention on America's Most Wanted, but by 1998, it seemed as though the killer would never be caught. But then an arrest was made. Rayna's brother-in-law, Ray McCarty, who was 28 at the time of her murder, was arrested and charged with the killing in 1998. Lori McCarty, who was married to Ray, was Rayna's older sister, and although there was a considerable age difference between the two, the younger sister often spent a lot of time around the McCarty house. Rayna also became close with Ray. Too close. When Ray was 24, he began molesting 12-year-old Rayna, which resulted in a pregnancy when the girl was just 13. McCarty used the typical method of operation of a child predator by first appearing as a friend to Rayna and then using a combination of compliments and threats to take advantage of her. He was eventually convicted of molesting Rayna, served time in jail, and was then placed on probation. The local police were particularly interested in the fact that McCarty threatened Rayna and her parents' lives if she ever revealed the truth of his despicable acts. She did report him and was later murdered. Almost immediately, McCarty was the top suspect. Besides his past crimes and threats against Rayna, he couldn't provide a valid alibi for his whereabouts during the time she was abducted. Despite the circumstantial evidence against McCarty, there was no physical evidence and no eyewitness that could place him with Rayna the day she disappeared. Perhaps feeling a bit of pressure, the LaPorte County Prosecutor's Office charged McCarty with murder in 1998, but released him 15 months later when it was clear there was not enough evidence to convict him. Investigators either had to find more evidence against McCarty or look for new suspects. With few leads, police started exploring new possibilities, wondering if Rayna might have been the victim of a local serial killer. Larry Dwayne Hall was described by many as polite and mild-mannered, yet beneath the calm exterior lurked a raging serial killer. Larry Hall was a native of Wabash, Indiana, who worked as a janitor and enjoyed taking part in Civil War reenactments in his free time. He also enjoyed killing women. Hall confessed to killing a number of women, and some authorities believe the count may be as high as 40. So far, Hall has not garnered as much attention as other more well-known serial killers, but that may change if more murders are attributed to him. In 2010, a book written by Christopher Martin titled Urges, a chronicle of serial killer Larry Hall, was published and argued Hall may be Rayna Rison's killer. He pointed out that Hall and McCarty knew each other in grade school, which suggested that there may have been collusion in Rayna's murder. Martin also stated that a police search of Hall's home turned up a box of birth control pills with Rayna Rison's name on it, although investigators said that none of the drugstores in the area had a prescription for Rison. He was also apparently out of the area during a reenactment when Rayna disappeared. It was never explained why Hall had those pills in his possession, but some investigators believe it was part of one of the killer's sick fantasies. Hall, like many other people in Indiana, simply followed Rayna's case and got some sort of perverse pleasure out of fantasizing about the details of her death. LaPorte County authorities were firm in their belief that Hall couldn't be the one who killed Rayna Rison. To the public, it seemed like her killer, or killers, might never be found, leaving the case to grow cold. But behind closed doors, as Martin was attempting to point fingers at Hall, the police were quietly closing in on the real killer. In the criminal's world, there are unwritten rules, like not being a snitch, but looking out for yourself often comes first. Loyalty can quickly change depending on the situation, and sometimes the right person might step forward to help the police. A criminal who is tight-lipped and loyal to another person at one time may find that loyalty detrimental to his own life in the future. The criminal underworld is also a domain driven by fear. Some of the most successful criminals keep their underlings under control through extreme acts of violence that are perpetrated either on others for the underlings to see or on the underlings themselves. A criminal is less inclined to give the police information on one of his associates if the person is known to employ extreme violence against his enemies. In the cold case murder of Rayna Rison, the crime was ultimately solved not through forensic evidence, but by the police breaking through the false sense of loyalty and violence in the criminal world. 38-year-old Jason Tibbs was arrested in August 2013 for the murder of Rayna Rison. The arrest came as a surprise to many in LaPorte County who expected her killer to be an outsider like Dwayne Hall. But it turns out that Tibbs was in fact at the top of the suspect list at the beginning of the investigation. At the time of Rayna's disappearance and murder, Tibbs was 18 and had briefly dated Rison. It was quickly determined that Tibbs still held a flame for Rayna, as indicated in letters that he wrote to her in which he said he would go to almost any extreme to date her again. A ring that was identified as belonging to Tibbs was also found in Rayna's abandoned car. Also, in the years after Rayna's murder, Tibbs developed a reputation as a violent thug in LaPorte County. When Rayna's sister and former classmates graduated from high school and went on to start careers and families, Jason Tibbs graduated from the School of Hard Knocks. Tibbs had encounters with the police throughout the 1990s and was known as a tough guy within the local criminal underworld. A combination of fear and misplaced loyalty helped protect Tibbs from justice for 2 decades. But time began running out for him in 2008. Ricky Hammonds was 14 when Rayna Rison was murdered. Like Tibbs, he was a bit of a juvenile delinquent who enjoyed skipping school and smoking pot, and also like Tibbs, he immersed himself in LaPorte County's criminal underworld during the 1990s. In 1999, at the age of 20, Hammonds shot and killed a man in rural LaPorte, which landed him in the Wabash, Indiana State Prison with a 45-year sentence. Life had not gone well for Ricky Hammonds. Then, in 2008, for reasons that are debated, Hammonds reached out to LaPorte County detectives with information in the cold case murder of Rayna Rison. Tibbs' attorneys argued that Hammonds made up the information for a reduction to his sentence, but LaPorte County prosecutor denied that, stating, "There was no deal with a witness despite the suggestion there was." a man has a lot of time to contemplate his life behind bars. Perhaps feelings of remorse and sympathy for the Rison family, combined with no reason to fear Tibbs anymore, made Hammonds come forward. It may also be that he just wanted to get even with Tibbs for some reason. Tibbs was known to intimidate and bully younger delinquents in LaPorte County, so maybe Hammonds finally saw his chance to get even. Regardless of his reasons, Hammond's statements to LaPorte County investigators quickly got the ball rolling that led to Tibbs' arrest. Hammonds told the authorities that on the night of March 26, 1993, he was smoking marijuana in the hayloft of a pole barn when a car pulled in that was driven by his sister's boyfriend, Eric Freeman, with Jason Tibbs along as passenger. He said that Tibbs then opened the trunk of the car where he could see what appeared to be a body wrapped in a blanket. Freeman argued with Tibbs over what happened before Hammonds then snuck out of the barn. Although Hammond's statement appeared to verify what many LaPorte County investigators originally thought, more evidence was needed to corroborate his story in order to make an arrest. The next step was to locate Eric Freeman. Locating Eric Freeman was easy, as he too was incarcerated on a murder conviction. Where it is possible that Ricky Hammonds may have been driven by a combination of remorse and vengeance to come forward with information on the murder of Rayna Rison, Eric Freeman was clearly driven by fear. The fear of spending the rest of his life in prison. Although Freeman is currently serving time in prison for murder, he, like most murderers, will probably be paroled someday. The likelihood of him ever being released would be severely diminished if he was convicted of another murder. So Freeman quickly decided to talk under one condition, that he receive immunity from prosecution for the murder of Rayna Rison. Unlike in movies and television shows, prosecutors in the real world are usually reluctant to award full immunity to criminals in order to obtain their testimony in court. Cutting a few years off a pending sentence is common, but sometimes full immunity is awarded if the person in question played a significantly lesser role in the crime, or there are other special circumstances. Serving time for a previous murder conviction is obviously a factor in Freeman's case, since he wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. Freeman's statement to police and subsequent testimony at Tibbs' murder trial corroborated Hammond's statement and also filled in some important details. According to Freeman, he rode with Tibbs to the Pine Lake Animal Clinic so that Tibbs could speak with Rayna and hopefully persuade her to start dating him again. The conversation quickly turned into an argument, as Rison was adamant that she did not want to date Tibbs as she was seeing someone else. Despite Freeman's testimony, the next part of the story remains somewhat enigmatic. For some reason, after she had a heated conversation with Tibbs, Rayna agreed to get into the car with him and Freeman. Freeman then said that he drove the two to a rural area where their argument continued, until Tibbs realized he could not win, so he then overpowered the girl and strangled her to death. The two men then put Rayna's body in the trunk of the car and drove to the barn to contemplate their next move. It was at this point that Hammond saw Freeman and Tibbs. After a heated argument over what he had done, Tibbs convinced Freeman to help him dispose of Rayna's body. Freeman claimed he helped Tibbs because he feared going to prison and what the killer might do to him. He also felt a sense of loyalty to his troubled friend. But nearly 20 years later, Freeman feared spending the rest of his life in prison more than his former friend. On November 7th, 2014, primarily due to the testimonies of Hammonds and Freeman, Jason Tibbs was found guilty of the murder of Rayna Rison and sentenced to 40 years in prison. Under the Indiana Department of Corrections parole system, Tibbs will probably serve just under 20 years. Despite the length of the saga to bring Rayna's killer to justice and what many believed was too lenient of a sentence for Tibbs, the Rison family has finally found some peace and closure. Hopefully now my family can find some semblance of peace from what we've been through for the last 20 years, said Rayna's father, Ben Rison. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Rayna's case. If you found this story compelling and want to help keep true crime stories for no sleep free of ads, subscribing to Dreams and Crimes is the best way to support the show. Your support keeps the stories coming, told just the way you enjoy them. We appreciate you being part of this journey.